Welcome to this video. Cambodia S1K, dreams come true. I'm going to tell you a story about how the channel came to be in existence. At the moment, as you can see, I'm sat here outside the Royal Palace in Phnom Penh. So if there's some background noise, so be it. I am actually sitting on the bike on the S1K, and where did it all begin? In London, 10 years of age. Every weekend on a Saturday, myself and a group of friends used to get together and buy a thing called a red Bus Rover. It was 60p for a child to have access to all the buses in London. You could effectively go as far as you wanted and back and stay on the bus, etc. Go round and round, up and down to your heart's content, all for 60p on a Saturday. And that's what we used to do. And one of the first things we did, where it was a meeting place almost for kids from other areas, we used to head to South Kensington, and there was a high performance car dealer located just by the station. As you come out across the street, it was right by the crossing, and they used to have the cars of the day in there. I'm talking the 1980s, and the car on the planet. Every kid had a poster on their wall of this car if they were interested in cars, or they were a boy, or even girls. And it was the red Countach, Lamborghini Countach. And for whatever reason, they had that car in this showroom for quite some time. But they also had Aston Martin Lagonda, and I think they may have had a Rolls Royce in there from time to time. But we were interested in the Lamborghini Countach. And myself and my friend Richard Green, if you're out there, please send a message. I haven't heard him for a very long time. We'd go and stand at the window, and we did this for weeks on end. And we used to dare each other to go in. And then one Saturday we decided, okay, let's do it. So we made a pact. We're going to go in, see if we can just look inside the car. We had no intentions other than that. As soon as we opened the door, a man come running out from behind the door and screaming at us, "What are you doing? Get out of here!" Whoa! It's like we'd stolen something. We hadn't even got our foot in the door, and he was on us. Because of the motion of us walking in, we had already arrived inside by the time the whole commotion was into full swing. And me and my friend, we just turned bright red. We matched the colour of that Countach, and I was disgusted with his behaviour. I said, "We've just come to look at the car. We don't want to touch it or anything. Can't we just look at it?" "No, you can't. Get out of the shop now." And to this day, I remember word for word what I said to him. I said, "How do you know that we're not in here looking for a car for our dad to find out how much they are?" He had no idea. How could he have any idea? The reality was we didn't. We were two kids from single parent families. Myself with 3 sisters, him with another little sister. We went to the most rubbish school in the entire state of England, and it literally did come bottom 4 years running. But we were smart kids, and we knew where we weren't wanted. And I walked out of there, and I promised myself I'd never treat anybody in that way. I was brought up differently. I wouldn't have treated anybody that way then, let alone for the rest of my life. But I learned a valuable lesson that people are and can not be nice people, and he was proven by that. And how could he have done it differently? Well, this is what the story is about. I made it a point of getting involved in BMX, which was the craze at the time. And I remember laying at night praying that my mum would buy me a BMX. the sad part was she'd just bought me a brand new bike for Christmas, but it wasn't a BMX, and I didn't have the heart to break it to her because money was tight in those days. But eventually I plucked up the courage, and my mum said, well, actually my mum identified first that I wasn't happy, and she asked me, why? What's wrong with the present? Don't you like it? Come on, tell me. It's okay, you can tell me. So I did, and I told her. I said, it's not a BMX, Mum. She said, but it looks like one. I said, yeah, but it's not. And she said, so what bike did you want? And I said, oh, I won like Alex's. Alex was a friend of mine who rode a Pro Star, and I knew that was around the same price as the Grifter. So I told her this. It's about £110, Mum. Alex has got a red one. You know, I could get a blue one. We could have the same bike. And she said, you want the same bike as Alex? My mum was a Mrs. Original. She didn't like us to copy other kids or be copied even in that sense. So over the course of the next few weeks, she was feeding back to me, asking me questions about the bike. Why did I want one? What was the reason behind it, etc. And then one Saturday afternoon, my mum never had it out with me except we went to shopping. She said, how about after we go shopping, we go up to this bike shop you're always talking about, have a look around, you can show me what BMX is all about, you know. You seem to go there a lot, don't you? And I did, and I used to ride up there on my bike. It was a good hour on a ride, solid, without stopping. And fast forward, we're in the shop. I'm age 12 now. We're in the store, and we're walking around, and the Pro Star's in there, and my mum says, so this is the one you want? I said, yeah, you know, there's a reluctant yeah, but it was a yeah, because it was better than the Grifter. She said, look, we're going to take your bike back, as long as they will let us return it, then we'll use that money towards this, so is this the one you want? I said, yeah, Mum, you know, I didn't want to be, take liberties, and I'm a grateful kid, and I realised how tough money was, tight around. So I said to her, yeah, that's the one. And she said, so why have you been touching that one over there the whole time? Why do you keep going back to that one? Pointing to the direction where I practically hung out. I've spent many a Saturday in that store hanging out around this particular bike. My mum didn't miss a trick. She said, take me over there and show me that one. The one you're looking at. So I did. And I explained to her what the difference is between this bike I'm showing her now and the one that I was suggesting we get. And she said, so why do you want the other one then? I said, Mum, it's the price, Mum, it's expensive. And I purposely had the price tag turned around so she couldn't see it. It's hanging off the bars there. And she said, how much is that one? I said, Mum, it doesn't matter, just get me the other one. She said, turn it around, let me see how much it says. Anyway, I turned this thing around, and you bearing in mind, I fell asleep dreaming about this bike. I dreamt about this bike morning, noon and night. I thought about nothing else in the class. You know, we didn't have the internet then. I thought about the colour. I knew every inch of this bike, every millimetre. I knew the colour schemes, I knew the parts. I'd studied the parts in the BMX magazines, and all the while I just laid at night, you know, dreaming of this bike, and I literally had dreams about it. So I turned it around, and my mum's face, it dropped. It did. You know, people say, you see their face dropped, their heart dropped into their belly. That's what happened. And I went, Mum, and I just tried to sort of usher her away, and I went, see, I told you. And she went, oh, hold on. She said, that much money for why? So I said, because of all the things I've explained to you, Mum, the quality parts, and it's top of the range. It's top of the range. And she said, but it's more than twice the cost of that one that Alex has got. And I said, that's why I didn't want to ask you for it, Mum. And this bike, it was £265. That was double and some, right? What's it called, she said. Diamondback, mum. Diamondback professional. Diamondback professional. And this is the one you really want. Don't tell me the truth. Is this the one you really think about? Is this the one you really want? I said, Mum, don't. Let's just go. She said, David, I'm asking you to tell me now, is this the bike you want? I said, Mum, yeah. It is, Mum. I'm not going to lie, I dream about this bike. And I started telling her about the months leading up to us getting into that room with all those bikes and me and her standing at it. And she said, all right, well then this is the one. We're going to get him to put a sold sign on it. I can't buy it now, we're going to have to pay it off. We're going to have to, as long as we get the money for the other bike, and then we'll start paying it off, and you can have it in time for your birthday. Well, because the grifter present was for Christmas. We're in about March now, so I'm thinking I've got a whole summer to get through. How good is that? No, that bike's coming to me at the end of summer. My birthday's at the end of the summer holidays. And that was it. And every Saturday on Sunday, because it was in the window, and I asked the man to keep it in the window, can I come up and look at that? I said, please keep it in the window. So when the shop was shut, I used to ride up there, look at it through the window. And on a Saturday morning, which is my only day off when the shop was open, you know, from school, the shop closed at 1. So I used to get up there in the morning and go in and touch it, you know, just touch the bike and look at it and admire it. Wow, I love that bike. And that's how it went on. And I did get that bike early for the summer holidays, and it was the best thing that ever happened for me. My dream literally came true. And I became a competition rider on that bike. Won competitions in skate parks, learned new tricks. I wasn't a BMX racer, I was a BMX freestyler. And wow, that took me all over London, the southeast, Greater London, to the coast. I'd go out on that bike. One day, in fact, I decided I was going to spend the whole day coming from, because I never left my bike in the garage downstairs. I never kept a lock on it because I never trusted anybody that they might steal it from me. So we lived on my bedroom was on the 4th floor, and you had to go up a communal stairwell of 1, 2, 3, 4 flights of stairs before we get into our maisonette, and then inside there was one big flight of stairs up to my small bedroom. And I tell you, I kid you not, as small as I was that age, 5'6" I think I was, until I reached the age of 17, I used to lug that bike up, and it was light, but it was still heavy for me. I used to take that bike all the way up the stairs and into my bedroom, and literally sleep with it next to my bed so I could reach out and touch it. It might sound sad to some of you listening, but no, to me, this was my lover. I love this bike. And nothing was going to come between me and this bike. In the morning, one morning, I'd laid out my clothes on the bed so I didn't have to step off of it. I'd obviously had a shower the night before, bath rather, we didn't have a shower in those days. Woke up, put my clothes on, I just stepped off the bed onto the bike pedals, and I rode that bike down those 5 flights of stairs and out into the street, and I'd spend the whole day without taking my feet off the pedals, as a way to train myself skills to, you know, stay upright, not fall off. I'd practice tricks knowing, you know, I'd only practice tricks that I was confident I wouldn't put my foot down and plant my foot down. I'd go to skate parks, jump up curbs, go through doorways, get to shops and wait outside and ask people to pass me stuff out and pay them at the door. I refused to get off that bike. I'd eat on the bike. I'd sit there balancing with my feet up on either side of the wheel, and my bar and the front wheel turned sideways, and I'd just balance for ages and ages, and I learned how to balance, and this was this was the repayment for the gift I got, the dream come true. As I say, I rode for a few years, became freestyle. I built my own ramps, built a massive community. And eventually what it led to was the biggest magazine on the planet, BMX Action, came down to do a photo shoot and a piece on my the court pipe that I built in Islington, London. I used to ride around London and people would call out my name, and I didn't know how they knew my name. And when I'd go back to find out how they knew, they said, what do you mean? Everyone knows your name. You're like famous. I said, for what? He said, for BMX. You're the best BMXer there is. And I knew I wasn't, because I knew there were other kids that were better than me, but clearly they hadn't seen them. I had, because I was in competitions and riding the country. Show us a trick, do us a wheelie, do a bunny up, do a 360. And I'll start calling out all these tricks. They go, do another one, do another one. And I'll just be knocking out all these tricks for them on the ground outside wherever I've stopped. And then they'd just keep asking for more. They'd have to ride off because I'd run out of tricks. So I'd have to learn new tricks. And eventually I put that bike down. Started riding motorbikes. Had an MTX 125 that I went into partnership with a friend. We bought it. I was only 15 years old. He was 16. Then legal age to buy a 50, I think, but he just scammed it. We had a 125. We used to drive that around everywhere. And then friends used to have bikes and they'd let me use their bike, and another friend of mine eventually had a Fireblade and he'd let me ride that, and I'd ride that around, around town. And then another friend had a CBR, a Jigsaw, GXXR 650, GSX, yeah, 650. Used to ride that around. But I never really owned a bike until I moved many years later to Australia in 2012, and I decided to go for my license again because I never had it, and you needed to get one there. And by now it takes 2 years to get one. Anyway, I missed the appointment, and then I bounced it for another 2 years. Eventually I thought I'll give this another go. I went out, I bought a Triumph Street Triple 660, the fastest bike you could buy on a learner plate. I think that thing was deep restricted. I took it up to 190 k's. Excuse me. On a track, let's just say, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, in Australia. And I remember I had my L plates on. First you have to have L's and then P's, and then 2 years on P's before you can come off and get your full license and ride anything bigger. I remember I met a couple of people who were into biking as well, and they said, oh, we should go out for a ride one day. He rode a Victory. In fact, both of them had Victories, big Harley style bikes. And we used to go up to this motorbike cafe, go for these big nice rides around the central coast. And we used to sit there and talk all things bikes, history, our love of bikes, our love of riding, all the stories. Used to swap stories, and horror stories as well. And he said to me, what's your dream bike? Well, I knew Fireblade because I remember, and I always say this to people when I talk about riding one, was it was the first bike that I was taught that I had to hold on, because as soon as you pull that throttle back, it'll buck you like a wild horse. So I thought, well, it's a Fireblade. And he said, mine's a BMW S1000RR. I said, which one's that then? So anyway, I looked it up on the internet, and it was a bike I'd literally seen a couple of days before. A guy, at the time I was driving a commercial vehicle, and a bike pulled up alongside me at the traffic lights. Wow, it was the meanest looking badass bike I'd ever seen. And I remember it all started coming back to me as a BMW, and I remember now seeing the 1000RR down the side, and he was all geared up in the levers, he had a sick helmet on, and it was just looking well nice, and he pulled off, and I was just gutted that I couldn't keep up with him to look more at this bike. Anyway, it transpires this was the bike, and because I hadn't really said, I said, that's my dream bike, realising it was also mine, because I'd seen it and thought, that's the bike I want. And he went, yeah, but they're expensive, aren't they? And I thought to myself, yeah, they are, but I've got the money in my pocket if I want to go and get one. We talked about the prices. I was like, yeah, but that's a lot of money for a bike. It was the same value as my car. So I decided not to say anything. Plus I was still on my P's, I couldn't go out and get one if I wanted legally. 1000cc engine on a licence that only allows you to ride up to a 660, what do they call them out there? there's a name for it. It's like a P plate sort of thing. And I held on to that, thought that that's my dream bike and I can buy one if I want. If I'd have sold my car right there and then, I'd have had money to buy one for sure, but as I say, I couldn't ride it anyway, so I just kept that to myself. We carried on riding. I moved to another country to come on a trip to finish a book which I'm writing, and everything that this blog is about is all guided towards getting people to come so that I can start building a following to ultimately release my book to. And that's another story, literally. So we're in Phnom Penh and I decide, you know what, the weather's good here, the roads are not so great, but the good people are good. I'm going to go and investigate buying a BMW 1000RR. And so I did. And that's how I ended up with my bike, my dream bike. I spent a bit of time, I drove all over Cambodia, Phnom Penh, Campote, Kep, Sihanoukville, Siem Reap, all over, as I say, Phnom Penh. I think I even went, no, I didn't go to Battambang, but I went to places like Kampong Chenang, stuff like that. But I'd been to see a dealer up near the old airport, and the first bike that I saw was the one I was looking at, the budget I wanted to spend, second hand. And when I rode it, it just didn't feel right. He had another one there, it was a bit newer, and I thought, well, let me just ride it, see what the difference is. Anyway, I rode that, and I took it out for a test drive, and I went round the corner, and it was slow going, but I got out to this section of road, like 3 lanes wide, that lead up to a highway. And as I'm coming along it, pretty slow in the traffic, a girl comes up, because I'm still a bit sketchy, right? I haven't rode a 1000cc since the 5 lane in like 30 years prior, so I'm taking it easy. This girl comes alongside me on a cycle, a small child about 8 years old on a grown-up bicycle, one of those onion bikes from France. And she turns and looks at me. I had no helmet on or anything. She just looks at me, looks at the bike, and her face lit up. And I saw the face. I saw it was a mirror image of what my face was like when we used to look through that window at that Countach. My mate's face, my face, her face, all the same. We'd just seen the most amazing thing ever, like a dream, you know? And I'll tell you something now, I don't have a Lamborghini Countach, I've never been in one, I've never touched one, but I made a promise to myself that day, if ever I had that sort of thing, I would not stop people from enjoying it like I do. I would let them touch it, I would let them sit in it, I would let them start the engine, perhaps I would let them drive it, because they might not, enjoy riding it off, and me crying and watching them not being able to foot the bill. I'm not prepared to go that far, but realistically I'm allowed to allow others to access dreams like I got. So my second dream, I went all over, as I say, looking at BMWs 1000RR, and eventually, because of the look on that girl's face, I came back to the bike that I loved that day 4 weeks later, and I just paid right money for it. And then I went overseas to tidy up a bit of business, left it with a mechanic that I'd found, Mad Ape, who I've done a couple of videos about, to get it right, do the little bits of work that needed doing, straighten out the wheels, put new tyres on, just give it a once over, strip it down, rip it apart, check it all out, replace everything, brakes, whatever, and just make it good again. Overall, the thing cost $15,000. And when I came back from the airport, all I could think about when I was travelling was coming back to my bike, because I was bringing back parts from Australia because they're cheaper, etc, etc. And when I got on the bike, I started to ride it, and I started to see how much joy it brought to people. Everyone, men, women, children of all ages, would just run out to see it. I'd come out from shops and people would be standing there taking selfies and photos and touching it and sitting on it, and the security, when I leave it outside certain buildings, would be, stand by it and protect it, and and just coo. And when I'd come out, they'd be like, wow, that's my dream bike, that's my dream bike. And I say to them, yes, my dream bike as well. And it genuinely is my dream bike. And so now you'll see throughout the videos as time goes on how when people approach me, and I'll try and capture more of that, you know, as I do, because I'm still getting used to the whole filming everything and capturing it as it happens. You'll notice that I allow them to start it. Yeah, only the other day I came out of a shop and the security guard was leaning on it doing a selfie, and I said, mate, let me take a photo of you on it. I said, get on it, give me your camera, I'll take a photo of you. No sir, no bong, no bong. I'm like, yes, come on. And then I let him start it, and it never gets boring. And this is the story about how you can live you can obtain your dreams. If you just dream about something long and hard enough, there are opportunities and pathways towards achieving them. And for me to just play a small part in a relatively impoverished nation, play a small part in realizing children's, men, women's dreams, even if it just means touching it. Because sometimes, and I learned this in management when I worked for a financial company, a bank, Citibank, and a manager, when they employed me, they were employing everyone had a degree, like a higher degree with distinction. And during the first team meeting, they said, put your hands up if you have a degree, put your hands up if you have a master's. And basically half the room put up their hand for the master's, and they said, put your hand up if you don't have any of that. And it was just me. And the guy said to me, stand up on the table. I was thinking, this is humiliating. First they were taking the mickey out of my shoes because I had fashion shoes on. Quite right, they should have, but I was working in an office, I wasn't from customer facing. And he said to me, how are you here? And he said, look at this, look, he's got none of what you got, and he's here, so this is your competition. And he said to them, this is your competition. For the next 5 weeks I was top of the charts. Pips they called them. I had the most pips week in, week out. I was winning all the prizes, vintage champagne, malt whiskies, aged whiskies, all sorts, you know. And I remember this manager, I'll never forget him, because I was about 24 at the time, 23. He sat me down and he said, right, you're not doing any work today. He said, I want you to go down the shop and buy yourself a nice little pad, something you like. And when you come back, I'm going to give you a pen to use, and I want you to write in that something, but I'll tell you when you get back. When I eventually arrived back, he said, okay, now I want you to write down all the things that you want in life. And I genuinely never wanted anything. There's a long story behind that, but I had a failed company and I'd really been damaged, and I took a business that ended up becoming a multi-billion-dollar business, a trillion-dollar business, some might say, globally. And I was at the beginning of it, and one of the founders of pushing certain elements of it through, and a lot of people became very wealthy on the back of my ideas, and still do today, on lots of different categories, marketing and sales-wise. He said to me, write down everything you want, and I just couldn't. I spent half a day trying to figure out what I wanted. Eventually I filled up this page and went on with my life. And about 10 years later, he said, you're going to achieve all these things in a set period of time. It was 10 years. I must have sort of put it in a bag, and it ended up in my parents' loft, and eventually I sort of found it during a move, and I opened it up, and you know, I ticked everything off on that list, and I looked back at when I'd done it, and it was within 7 years of a 10-year list. I've done things like went East-West America, I've done skydiving, all sorts, big things. And so, you know, write it down. And then I learned later when I was becoming a writer, I said, you got to write it out to write it in. If you don't write it down, you can't write it, it ain't going to happen. Write it down, because how do you know what you want until you write it down? And so write it out, put it out on a piece of paper to write it into your life. So anyone who's listening to this who needs to be motivated, sit yourself down and do that. Write a list of all the things you want to achieve and give yourself a time frame. and just meditate on it. And true as true, that will happen. I guarantee. And if it doesn't, you can come back and have a moan at me at the end of the period. Okay? Keep the piece of paper and let me know how you get on. Write down in your comments dreams you've had that have come true. Please do, and please help grow the channel. And we just hit the 30 minutes mark, and a good friend of mine, Curly, said I reckon 30 minutes would be good for a video, so 30 minutes it is. I'm Gugu, some call me Gugu, G-U-G-U. I do have a Christian name, and you may have picked that up in the videos, but this is the Cambodia S1K channel. This is Dreams Come True, the vlog, and this is Royal Palace in Phnom Penh. And as my good friend Curly also says, ride free, ride safe. God bless you all. And now I'm going to leave you with a parting shot of the S1K. Oh!